So you can start now.
Okay, we can start then. Hello, everybody. So we are pleased to be part of this discussion panel organized by QAG Media, and for this forum and summit, we will be discussing about some improvements and threats that can affect OT cybersecurity for the further development, which is the state for now. And here we have in the panel discussion our OT security specialists and persons that can share their thoughts and experience in this domain. And I want to start introducing of me. My name is Albert Vartic. I'm the OT security officer in OMV Petrom in Romania, working for the last 15 years in instrumentation and control, and then OT cybersecurity, and mainly in oil and gas industry. And I will start with my colleagues to introduce themselves. Please, Muhtin.
Yeah, Muhittin Asancıoğlu. I have a 36 years of IT and cybersecurity leadership experience. I have been the CISOs of Royal Dutch Shell and Petronas Group over my career. And my recent role was with Petronas in Kuala Lumpur, helping them to become secure. Back to Andreas.
Andreas, okay.
Hi, my name is Andres. I've been working in IT all my life, and in the last 10 years, I've been focusing on the OT part of the different companies I work with for architecture, design, and also cybersecurity part of it.
Thank you, Andreas. Yosi?
Hi, my name is Yosi Shavit. I'm serve as the head of ICS Cybersecurity Department in the Ministry of Environmental Protection in Israel. In my position now, I'm responsible for more than 4,000 plants. The common of all these plants that they have hazardous materials. I have more than 25 years of experience, hands-on experience, writing methodology, writing regulation, and also a lecturer in the Israeli Academic College.
Thank you, sir. So I will jump in direct in the topic of the subject of our meeting and panel discussion. As I said from the beginning, the OT cybersecurity became a challenging domain, and everybody already for years sharing experience like what is the difference between IT, OT domain of this cybersecurity, which is the convergence, which is the challenges. But we want to dive in specific topics that can improve the already in place the cybersecurity domain used by either in the critical infrastructure, manufacture, and other industries. And I want to start with the topics like what are the initiatives, the training tools, the processes that cover that triangle of process, technology, and people that are rolling out or you are aware of them to be applied and changing that threat landscape that are affecting OT cybersecurity efficiency. So what are the proven effects of using these tools and approaches? Could you please move in? Tell us.
Yeah, I think when you look at any technology domain or anything that you would like to secure, there's three elements: technology, people, and the processes. Historically, OT domain has been very separate than the IT domain, and you see the convergence taking place at the technology level. Not necessarily a discussion is about the organization, but it's about the technology. So most of the OT landscape is an IP-based technology, and you see more and more new technologies to be introduced to get the value out of big data, to get the optimization or new technologies in the OT domain. So necessarily brings up the security environment, and the threat landscape has been advanced that the OT domains are become more subjective to attacks and malware. Now, a couple of different examples. First of all, there's a cultural aspect, which Andreas will talk about it, which we will need to eliminate between the instrumentation engineering division and the cybersecurity function. I don't mention IT. As far as I'm concerned, I'm a security officer. I'm not an IT officer. My job is to secure for IT and OT platforms. I do need to understand the differentiation between IT security versus OT security because the risks are different, as well as also the business sensitivities and requirements are different, and the technologies that you apply in the OT domain is different. However, the fundamentals are the same. In the OT domain, you need to understand your asset base. Where is your assets? Which part of the network? Are they connected, not connected? You need to be able to understand your inventory in the detailed fashion. You need to understand your vulnerabilities. You need to understand your risk, business risk that either application level, DCS level, or PCD level, or SCADA level that you do have, and you need to value those risks based on the business criticality, which is the risk is owned by the business, not by me as a security officer or instrumentation engineer. It's the business itself, which allows us to act and use these technologies to protect the OT domain. One important aspect is understanding assets, vulnerabilities, threat is one thing. The second thing is ability to respond needs to be there. In my opinion, in the oil and gas industry, which is very distributed, you can have 100 different, what they call offshore platforms, gas plants, onshore pumping stations, or pipelines. You need to be able to respond at more agile manner. That requires a more distributed way of deploying patches when it's needed, not like IT environment every Thursday of the month. But you need to be able to have the speed of responding to your threat levels. And you need to be able to work very closely with your suppliers. And one of the difficulties in the OT environment, especially, is the so many number of vendors and so many different platforms, even within an existing plan. You need to collaborate with them so that you have a secure releases available to you, and so on. So the technologies out there exist, and they are evolving. And my view is that going forward with the new concepts coming in, like the 5G, 6G, or direct connection to the cloud, IoT, and so on, all these things is going to bring another dimension of technology into our domain, which also we need to make a decision, how can we efficiently, in a cost-effective manner, we can deploy, because Purdue model by itself, it cannot work with the IoT and others, because you cannot afford to bring every level of the network the necessary segregations. So that's the technology aspect. But the second aspect is you need to train the staff on the operational level, which is the LOD one, line of defense one, operating according to the controls, and which is another level of challenge, in addition to educating the leadership, OT plants, manufacturing managers, and the technology, technical leaders in the OT plants to be able to collaborate with you, work with you to determine what's critical and help you to mitigate some of those risks based on the business criticality. I hope that helps, Albert.
Yeah.
I covered
Yeah,
all.
Yeah, you pretty much in the short time covered all these aspects, and you really rely on that triangle of process, people, and technology. Yeah, that is the main one. But how can we ensure that since what is security domain came this as a new domain in operation, how can we ensure that we build that trust through the organizations and that cross function, collaboration? You see, can you please tell us any efforts on this?
Yeah, sure. I'm a very strong regulator in Israel. As I said before, I'm responsible for the hazardous materials plants in Israel. We have a hazardous materials law, very tough law since 1993. And in this law, every plant must get toxin permit. And we renew this toxin permit every 1 year. And we add cyber condition in this toxin permit. We add cyber, we add cyber condition in order to raise the resilience of those plants. The toxin permit is very tough. If the plant is not obey to this condition, it could be criminal record. It could be fined till about $2 million. It could be closing the business by the ministry. And I'm guiding all these activities. We developed a new cyber guide. Actually, it's a specific cyber book for this kind of business, for OT network and for hazardous materials plants. As much as I know, is the only one in the world. And we translate it to English by the request of the OECD. So the plant get this cyber guide, and it take the cyber guide, do risk assessment, and then implement all the controls. And I'm visiting these plants about 2-3 times a week, so I can control the activities. I must say that we started with this regulation since June 2020, almost more than 3 years, and it's working very, very good. And I see how the plants is raised the resilience from, let's say, from 50-60% to not to 100%, but at least 90%. And it's very good activity.
So basically you put in place the processes very defined to put the part for the OT cybersecurity to be identified within other and within organization, so other domains can count on it, and you make the resilience for that. Right. Very good. But you see, there are many challenges to be done, and even people are working on that. But how new technology can bring, let's say, the opportunities to overcome and to pass the threats that, or to face the threats that are on the market and on the happen in OT cybersecurity. Andreas, do you want to share some thoughts?
Yeah. So the landscape between IT and OT, for example, is very different, as we saw there, and the maturity level are really different. So there are new technologies that they're coming on the OT world that might be already in the IT world, but they need to be tweaked and fine-tune a little bit on those, that it could be a good benefit of the OT world. I mean, everyone knows about, you know, the new firewall generations that they start to speak the OT protocols, things like that. Same as the secure remote connection devices, that there are several presentations here. So we have new technologies capable to give us more secure connection to our OT world without fully integrated with the IT world. And same as other technologies like IoT devices that are coming in, the 5G connectivity, and also some virtualization stuff and things like that could help us to overcome several threats, stop them, control them, and if needed, recover from them. No, so we are able to implement again backup solutions that are more suitable for the OT environment, same as a specific EBR, antivirus solutions that help us to identify those threats, and also same as other tools that are more specific to the world, you know, like the cybersecurity appliance of several vendors that are on the market who help us to identify the asset that Mohit mentioned it's important, no? What are the assets you have in your factory? How do you speak between themselves? What are the vulnerabilities that they get? So with all that information, then you can start doing your roadmap or your pump up of how I could start securing, you know, better my OT environment.
Yeah, thank you, Andreas. So, but you know, we have the processes implementation, we have new technology, but still the challenging comes, which is the priority. And could you please, Muhtin, tell us which would be the main domain to invest to improve the cybersecurity?
I think that you need to, it's first of all, it's a journey. Anybody is thinking that over the 1 year it's going to be solved, it's an illusion. It's about, it takes 3, 4, 5 years because it's so diverse and it's so many different components. I think number one, in my view, is you need to invest on the cultural aspect of educating the plant managers, technical authorities, and production managers and the business leaders so that they understand the risk and implication of it. Secondly, is that you need to work with the on the shop floor level, the operators, DCS system vendors, and so on, so that you have a collaborative way of working going forward. That's number one. Number two is deploy, understand the risk, because not everything is the, when you look at the OT domain, so far, one of the biggest risks is people coming into the plant with the memory stick, which is a malware, and then exposing them. Now, that risk doesn't even need a what do you call technology to eliminate. Only thing is you block the USB ports, then you can minimize the at least the impact of it. So technology is important, but it needs to be scaled in line with the risks that you have. And not every plant, every site has the same risk. You need to understand the business prioritization and start with the understanding your baseline. When you understand your baseline, then you will be able to take necessary actions, building the smart firewalls and the different layers so that you do segmentation of network. Then you will be able to understand your threat landscape, and you will be able to respond with distributed software distribution or patch management and so on, again, in a structural control manner. So all these are going step-by-step approach. You don't need to do everything at one go, but you need to start somewhere and drive it. And most importantly is also, it needs to be sustainable so that it's not saving the day. And what Yosi said, that's what also me as a CISO in cybersecurity function line of defense too, I have to do that every day, every year, assessing my plants. And if they are red, I need to declare the board, not the management team of a plant, the board, that this plant is not fit to operate according to the risk and the risk appetite that board has established. And be honest, guys, when you look at this OT space, is actually where the money is. If the 1 day of a production or spill of a leakage in our plants, or explosion threat, or environmental hazards, or the impact on our staff, is really critical. It's more than losing $10 million because somebody encrypted your system. So we need to be aware of that, and we need to be able to explain these risks our business leaders in a language that they understand, not with the bits and bytes, not with the Purdue model, but understand what it is. And one other thing that you need to, two things that you need to be careful. The OT environment is very, let's say, brownfield, a lot of aging equipment difficulties. You cannot upgrade everything one go. Again, you need to prioritize what needs to be upgraded, what doesn't need to be immediately. That's an important aspect because majority of vulnerabilities come through that way. And the second thing is you need to be proactively aware the technology changes taking place where your business wants to grow. And I can share that with you in the oil and gas industry, that the plants want to have 5G, 6G telecommunication capabilities. They want handheld capabilities. They want big data to go to the cloud, the digital twin record the cloud to come down to the plants. So all those are new threats and new challenges and new risks. You need to proactively act on it. And you need to lead the discussion, being on the table with the business so that they secure by design rather than after the event, which is more costly and high risk. So as CISOs, as the practitioners, you really need to act as a business leader. You are no different than, you should think like a production manager. What's his anxiety? His anxiety is, do I lose production day? Or if this patch doesn't work, my plant shuts down, or. So you need to act with those mindsets to help them and prioritize this with the the legitimate discussion, with the intellectual discussion, with the risk discussion with the businesses, and act as a step by step to get there. Otherwise, you will save the day for 1 year or two. But I'm telling you, year after that, you will fall back, because it needs also consistent investment. And you need to be projectized or projectile that every year certain amount of investment needs to come, rather than it's going up and down across the board. And this is a really fundamentally transformation and change related discussion, and you need to be aware of that. And lastly, that we all see smartphones everywhere, even in the plant level they want to use it, even though we don't have an internet. Now they want a wireless connectivity at the plant level. So those mobile devices needs to be secure too, no longer the DCS system. So you need to be aware and understand those risks and act them step by step. And it's a journey, prioritize and take forward. And you need to deliver. You don't need to talk, deliver. And you build a confidence, you build a trust, hold hands with the production teams and the operators, and get the nirvana, get the future success. Otherwise, you will fail.
Thank you, Muktin. So just concluding all this is just that there is not a cookbook where you can sit and say point by point, you can do this like other do, or you can use this framework and you'll be successful. And these are the steps to be taken. Everything is based on the analyze, is based on the operation model, is based on the strategies that applied on the top level, and what comes from the operation to the from the tactical to operation. And then this is not something that can be built to one organization and to another one. It needs to be followed those steps you mentioned.
Albert, one thing though, there is frameworks. So when you look at the simply NIST framework or ISO 62443, there's an overlap. So there are controls, as Yosi has mentioned. So let's be clear. But within that, you cannot do everything at one go. You need to prioritize based on your risk and which components that mitigates that risk. You may say that, you know, I can only patch 10% of my network or my DCS systems. That may be valid because of your businesses define that the urgency of it. But the frameworks are there. In my opinion, between the two frameworks, 80% is overlapping, 85%. Now, the method to apply may change based on the sensitivities of the OT network, but the fundamentals is very close, because it's very important, in line with the Yosi, how the plants need to comply. They need to know, and what the gap needs to be clear.
Yes, it's case by case and needs to be a rigorous study. But you said we have even on the chat a question about the suggestion how the transient cyber assets at OT side. You know, we are speaking of the process control network mainly on the lower Purdue level 0, 1, 2, and you also can share with us, like for the critical systems, like part of the control systems, how we increase the resilience for that.
You asking me, Albert?
Yes, please.
First of all, I have to answer a question in the chat.
Please.
Yes. So they ask, in the absence of strict regulation, can panel share more of how do we build trust to ensure we remain secure? So we have the stick, but we have the carrot. So from one side, I have very tough regulation, very strong, but on the other side, I give many candies to the industry. For example, we know that we have a problem with the cyber expertise in OT subject, in OT networks. So I open a cyber course once a year for operation managers, for production floor staff, mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, so they can know what are the threats inside the OT network, and they know already the solution. They won't be a cyber expert, of course, but they will know what they need. So we'll do it for free. And we gather about 40 or 50 guys every session, every course. And I just finished the sixth one, the sixth course. In addition to that, we established an industrial SOC, a SOC for OT network. And these days, we're starting with the pilot with 4 first plants. They connected to my industrial SOC, and they get it for free. And I'm not limited in EPS. They can transfer all the communication, whatever they want from OT or IT networks, they can just transfer to my SOC, and I digest the information. In addition, I bring them some more intelligence knowledge, even intelligence in level of countries. It's kind of intelligence they can never purchase themselves, and they can get it from collaboration between countries in the world. So we give them many candies. And as much as I hear from the field, they really like this regulation. It's ready regulation. The CISO get force. They go to the management, to the director or the directorium, and they get all what they need in order to comply with the regulation. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Albert, one more thing that I wanted, Yosi. What I find is also important is the transparency. Transparency in a sense of between the plants, between the total enterprise. And if you really communicate it to each other with the risk element of what does it mean, that gets a resolution from the others. And it also pushes them to reduce their risk, because they may, especially in oil and gas, safety is a very important aspect. So it's a business critical that the plants needs to be really safe. And that is a very important behavioral change and influence. And the second one is what Yosi is highlighted, using exactly what's happening today. There is so much intelligence out there, which CISOs get, package it and communicate it, that the real examples of what happened German aluminum plant or what happened in a cement plant, these are real things because it's happening and it has a direct impact. So that is also influences the behavior.
Yes, this is the program for training and awareness, which is part of the governance of any frames, and this needs to be exactly on the subject of what is covered by OT cybersecurity. Andreas, could you please, if you said that your background came from IT mainly, could you say maybe for that question in the chat about the transition of the cyber assets at OT side? Like, what do you see the difference and the culture change when you come from a domain like IT to OT, and which is the challenging here?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge, the main challenge that you can face, it's understanding how OT operates or how OT world works, right? Because it's very different for IT side. So that's the main cultural change. When you try to push things from IT into the OT world, I think that's one of the mistakes, no? Because you cannot just, as we say, mentioned several times, you cannot patch every Tuesday of the month, no? Systems cannot be automatically rebooted. You need to do a control process of doing things like that. So that's the main challenge: understanding and knowing what's there. Inside the cultural change or the person, no, that is one of the 3 pillars that we Muhit also mentioned. I think it's important that the IT people move, visit, and live, into the factories, into the OT world. They understand that virtual server that they have somewhere, when the SCADA crash, all of this is going out. This can happen. This can, things like that, or automatic warehouse. No, that the server is up. Okay, yeah, but now, the operator needs to remove manually all the pallets to, to make it happen. So you make a disruption bigger than the pure the component of the IT. So it's really important that people visit the shop floors, know about the shop floors, about the people, how it works there, and same vice versa, right? So I think it's also important that OT engineers and not maybe the operators. It works sometimes on the operator side, but especially of the maintenance engineering guys, come and see what the IT world is, knowing what we do in the IT world. You cannot apply the same thing, in the same way, but you can apply most of the things that in the IT world has into the OT, and bring that benefit. That's what we, based on my experience, we manage to do in different companies, and that's what brings value to the OT side. Make sure that things can run in a more secure way. Again, completely different for the IT landscape or manage from the IT, but you can use the same tools in the IT and in the OT, just in different ways. Okay, and not the same main tools. I mean, the same, SCCM you can use on both walls, different SCCMs, but you can use them, right, for patching or antivirus. But you can use those tools in both walls completely separate.
Thank you, Andreas. Here is a question in the chat, and I think Muhtin will help us to solve it. Do you see, Muhtin, the question about applying the cyber security controls in the environment?
Yeah, I believe you need the basis of any environment to be secure. Now the question is how far you want to go. You can have a environment that has 800 different controls versus the 35 controls. So, but my view is that if you look at the fundamental two important frameworks, there are adequate controls that they overlap, and you can use them as an integrated, critical 100, 150 controls that across the board for the OT domain. So that's needed. Now the question is how much you need to deploy these controls across every segment of your network or every segment of your environment. And that will differ based on the risk, because some of the controls that you apply would be higher into certain critical systems or workflows. But by the way, one other important differentiation is there a system critical or a workflow critical? Because one workflow can have multiple different systems, which three of them adds a huge risk to the plan rather than one single system. So you need to be able to differentiate those differentials. But I think there are adequate controls there to implement, but you need to be careful. You do not overkill, but you need to have the adequate one. And what Yosi doing in Israel, it really also, in a way, the European Union countries are adopting in Europe, this framework, which also allows the controls. And it's still maturing, by the way, compared to the GDPR, which is a heavy fines and so on. The NIS2 now came up, which will bring additional. But the rest of the world, Africa or Asia or Middle East, is following behind. So there is that you need to use the risk and business impact and the value, which you can only articulate by the business discussion and with the business language, not bits and bytes or port is open. What's important is what's the implication of that port being open to OT environment needs to be articulated with the business value. Otherwise, they get lost.
Yeah, but talking about controls, here in Romania, let's say we have the NIS law, which is the application of directive, European directive, and which by law, by the authority, which is the authority for cybersecurity in Romania, we have by law the minimum requirements that needs to be met. So that could serve as the frame for OT cybersecurity, even as a frame for the controls to be applied as a procedure, as a standard or something like this. So they are stipulated in the order which you use to the ministry, whatever, it's coming as a secondary legislation, and all those controls are stipulated by law. So that is a huge improvement. What was like 10 years ago, what is now in OT cybersecurity.
Correct.
We have one more question here about the management of industrial PC and cloud-based and SaaS platforms. Maybe Andreas has some clues here. No, Andrea?
Yes. So in terms of the management of industrial PC in cloud-based platform, I'm not a fan of a cloud-based for for a lot of things that relate to the plants, but it's true that more and more often vendors are moving up to the cloud for managing things and so on. It's a challenge, especially for the Purdue model way of thinking, okay, for the ISA-95, because now more of the critical devices on the shop floor requires this connectivity, to SaaS solution or to cloud solution, not just for IoT devices that it could be, aside of your process line, but also from pure the PCs, HMIs that you want to do with that. So it's an option to use SaaS solutions for manage those kind of PCs or devices like the smartphones that Muhib was mentioned, RFT guns that are more and more often, you want to manage centralized and so on. So it's possible. It's kind of risky depending on how deep you want to go with it. But for sure, with a proper network segmentation, firewall rules, and a proper auditing and review of those rules, it's possible and safe to go into that approach.
Yeah, but
Sorry, Albert.
I just wanted to conclude that if for some industrial PCs that are serving as engineering station for the safety instrumented systems, this would not be the most, the use case to use such in the cloud-based or service software as a service. And here I know UC has done some studies on resilient on the safety critical systems. Can you share that experience, please? Yosi.
Could you ask a question again, please?
For that resilience of the critical system, for the safety critical system that you shown that you have been done a study how the resilient of the plant needs to be without stopping the operation for the critical systems. Yeah.
Right. Because we're dealing with public health and environment, so I moved from the CIA triangle. Everybody knows the CIA, confidentiality, integrity, availability. It's not in my court. I moved to another triangle. I call it SRP. The S is for safety, the R for reliability, and the P for productivity. So I put all my efforts first on the safety, on the production floor. So I have in my cyber guide, I have about 99 controls that I ask the plants to implement. Most of the controls, controls for the OT network for the controllers. So if I ask, for example, to upgrade the controllers, they must do it very carefully, because if you upgrade a controller in the production floor, you can do a lot of damage. So I give them some options to do that. First option, you can do it. You can just establish laboratory environment. If you have some more controllers, you update the controllers in the laboratory environment. And if you see that everything is okay, you can just install them in the production flow. Second, you have technologies. You have the digital twin. You have the digital shadow. You can actually take all the physical system and you can export it to logical system. And then you can do updates, whatever you want, and you can check it. And then if you see it's okay, so you move it to the production floor. We're doing everything in the production floor very carefully. And if the plants tell you that they cannot implement some kind of control that I ask him in the cyber guide, so we think together about compensation. So that's what I said before. It's friendly regulation, because if I see that the plants, the CISO in the plants is doing something to raise the resilience, and if it choose, for example, it doesn't have the money for purchasing the firewall, so we can just separate the networks physically, no problem. I prefer, for example, bidirectional gateway to just put air gap between IT and OT network. But if the plans cannot afford it, no problem. We can just install firewall and then put the rules inside.
Thank you, Yosi. And Muhtin, yes,
Yeah, I was
that
going
was
to say
the.
a couple of things.
Yeah, I want to
Yeah,
come with
I
this,
mean,
Muhtin. Sorry, what you remember before that you dealing with those smart IoTs and using SAS platforms. That is the point. I want to come now after the
yeah,
critical stuff.
okay.
Yeah.
I think that when you look at this cloud environment compared to 5 years ago, cloud for IT is more secure. Let's be clear about that. However, still many people do not understand the shared operating model of the cloud. When you look at the ISIS model, PaaS model, SaaS model, each one of them has a different layer where the supplier's accountability starts, where your accountability finishes, or vice versa. And you need to be able to ensure it's happening, not to get a lip service, but it's really happening. You need to be getting SOC 2 type of reporting, which is liable, independently validated. So there's a conceptual risk and issues within that. When I look at the OT domain, I am paranoid about the production or anything that related to safety or aspect of my work, or the delay of the production, or impacting the plant and shutdowns and so on. So the number one question is, can we have a one-dimensional connectivity upwards to the cloud? I think that's much easier, because I can easily lift it up and nothing coming down, fine, because I can control my internal domain and my risk is very limited. However, if it's coming down, you need to be really careful. Is that should be on the OT network, or it should be segregated network, which allow to go up and down, but it doesn't impact your safety critical system or production and so on. So again, it's another thought process. Maybe what they call IoTs, maybe IoT shouldn't be on the OT network. It should be totally segmented as a separate network within the plant. And all these are the part of the risk assessment that you need to do when you're going into that. But you need to be aware of these components to be able to respond, because I don't believe, as a CISO, my job is not to say no. My job is to say how to secure and enable the business value, because at the end, it will generate business value. And that requires, for us, the practitioners and the CISOs, is being agile, proactive, and derive that space rather than being driven. Because if you do not respond to these things, business will continue, because the market and suppliers want to deploy their products, and they have their own view of what is risk, but it's irrelevant, because there's no liability at the end. Nobody signs a liability document when you go to this kind of a SaaS environment or any environment, and something happens, everybody looks at each other. And lastly, look at the supply chain attacks and the threats that we have been experiencing over since 2021. So we need to bring all these dimensions, never say no, but you need to be able to prepare yourself how you're going to do it.
Yeah, thank you. And that was actually the setup for all the frames. If you see, all start with assessing the risks. So before everything starts, you need to know what is the risk. Then you come with risk assessment, you identify those zones and conduits. You see which is the relation, which need to be isolated, taking segregated from other networks, put in of the cybersecurity requirement specification, and then kept as a Bible for the further operation of the systems to comply with these recommendations that are coming from those risk assessment. So in the end, I think we did a very productive and useful discussion, and we touch a lot of interesting topics. I don't see any other questions in the chat from participants, from the ones that are watching us or participant as well. And at the end, I would like to, for you, any of you, to say just few words how you see the OT cybersecurity became more the OT cybersecurity became more improved for the last 5 years or still the same. Just 3 words. Mustin, please.
I think it's going to be challenging, but it's going to be better. I think one of the important aspects is we start applying cybersecurity principles and frameworks and guidelines that will help. The second thing is, guys, this is a journey. It will take time, and it needs to continue after you go over the mountain. You cannot drop down to the valley again. And third thing is, it's a hard work. It's a hard work, lot of sweat, lot of blood, lot of drive. But if you don't take these 3, you will never succeed. So that will be my open and honest answer, which I lived through all of those steps.
Thank you, Andreas.
Yeah, I'm fully agree with him. This is a marathon. It's a long trip to achieve, and yeah, I agree with him. There are some frameworks we're putting in place. They're starting to be in place. The biggest challenge is going to be obsolescence of some of those manufacturing sites that will not allow you to apply all of those controls and so on. So you need to kick in some mitigations and activities, and it's going to be time. The cultural change is a key, because persons are the key factor. Technology is there, processes are there, but persons, if they don't follow them, the human being is there. So yeah, it's been improving. It's not an as IT that it was faster improved, but it's keeping improving in the OT world, which is good.
Thanks, Andres. And you see your thoughts?
I see a very good advance since I started with the regulation, as I said before, 3 years ago, 2020. If I look at the plants 3 years ago, I see no segregation between networks, no CISOs in the plants, team viewer on desktops, HMI station connected to internet. Today, 3 years after, I see a very nice advance. You cannot find plants that didn't segregate the network and do most of the controls that we ask. So I guess I'm happy. I think that I expect most of the countries to collaborate more, especially in the OT network, because we divided good guys and bad guys in the world. So all the countries, all the good guys in all the countries must be collaborate and participate more, doing more discussions and help each other to defend the good guys.
Albert, one more thing. Buying new tool is not going to solve the problem. So it's not a technology thing.
You better make sure that you have, if it's the old one or vintage component of the control system, or the system you have under the control, make sure that is there to have it as an inventory, and then protect it with the compensating measures than to buy something new. So this needs to be balanced on the, how you say in the oil and gas, alert principle, as low as reasonable possible. So I think we are closing now our meeting for now, and we'll see next what will be the questions or discussions.